I wanted to go after the EPA a little bit here. Matter of fact, I'm going to be doing this one, and I got a E.P.A Rant as well. And with the EPA, they're not trying to protect the environment like people think. It's all about the Benjamins. It's all about the dollar bills, y'all. That's all it is for them. There was a chemical company in my hometown. They were supposedly dumping mercury in the creek. And then this was a good many years ago. This was probably in the 70s or 80s when they got caught. Or I believe that the EPA knew about it already. But then they were getting hit with infractions by said EPA. But the EPA didn't use those infractions to clean it up. They didn't force the chemical company to clean it up themselves with the EPA watching them to make sure that they did it right. There was none of this. And it just went on for many years that the EPA did not do anything. They just said, pay us. It was almost like an extortion scheme. And this is what they do to a lot of industry, not just one chemical company, but they do it to everybody. The EPA is nothing more than like the government. The government exists because taxpayers fund it, and they can spend it on whatever they want, and we just have to foot the bill. EPA is the same thing. They don't bring anything to the table, just like the government. It's just pay us, and we spend. That's it. If you go to the EPA's website and look at how some of these EPA people that work there trash talk industry, you would swear up and down they have a vendetta against them. They're the most vindictive people I've ever come in contact with. And most of their agents that I've had to deal with from time to time, they don't know their butt from a hole in the ground. I'm sorry, they just don't. They barely know how to use their own equipment. And I'm thinking, why are they not, they're sending out these so-called field agents or whatever. They don't know how to use their own equipment. What is this, some kind of little rascals type of organization? I mean, Jesus Christ, I'm looking for alfalfa at this point. But anyway, getting back to the story, there was no way for citizens like myself, of course I don't remember all of this stuff. This stuff is more or less stuff I've researched over the years because they did go out of business, and they did owe my grandfather's company a good bit of money when they filed for bankruptcy. But there was a man who took over this chemical company, and he already had a few different industries under his belt, but they were all losing money. Well, what he did was, because this particular chemical company was they made the most purest form of chlorine dioxide here on the East Coast, that he cranked up production of this chlorine dioxide to, like, let's say 110%. Well, eventually the equipment is going to break down. And then how are you going to pay for the company that you have now that you've been turning it up, the processes? Because what he was doing was he cranked it up to 110%, and he was using that profit to pay for his other failing companies. And eventually you're just digging yourself a hole at that point. And when he did this, when he took over, everything went to hell in a handbasket, because I worked with a guy that actually was working there before this man took over, and then during that time period, and they used to keep good records of their mercury and everything. When he took over, the records went to hell in a handbasket. And they started dumping the mercury and all this other stuff. Evidently that's what was going on. And when they had to file for bankruptcy somewhere, I think in the 1990s, because it was the late 80s when they started to run into financial problems, and this went on for a little while, and then somewhere in about maybe the early to mid-90s, they had to file for bankruptcy. When they did, the E.P.D., who had been circling around that place like a pack of vultures, descended upon that place and shut them down. And then they got the local government here to create a splosh fund, and that means taxpayer money is funneled into this fund, and that money was used to pay for the cleanup. The EPA paid for nothing other than to send agents or send people out to clean this area up, but they probably got some of that money out of the splosh fund to do that. They'd never spend any of their own money because they don't have any. Or if they do, they're spending it on Bugatti Veyrons and $300 million mansions for themselves. They ain't spending it on cleaning up nothing, because it's not about the polar bears, the polar ice caps, the hole in the ozone layer. It's not about that. It's about getting paid. Giant extortion scheme, just like insurance or the government or anything else. I mean, they learn from the best. Now, to keep with this whole EPA thing, because of my uncle's company, and whether he deals with chemicals or the industries that he works in deal with chemicals, he has to take like seminars or refresher courses, just like a doctor or a lawyer might have to do with a, let's say there may be new medical procedures or new laws coming out. Well, the lawyer, even though they have their education, they're not up to date on all the new stuff coming out, and they have to know how it all works or get a glimpse of everything that's coming out. And they may not be in the know, and so they have to go to these little seminar refresher courses, whatever you want to call them, for said reasons. And my uncle has to do the same thing, because if you're dealing anything with the EPA, you have to know what's going on. You have to know what the new regulations are. Otherwise, you're going to be ignorant of the facts, and then they'll say ignorance of the law is no excuse kind of thing, and that's all garbage. It's constant updates or alterations or whatever. So he was up in, he went to either Atlanta, Georgia or Kennesaw, Georgia to get this seminar. And he saw that there were two rulings that the EPA had in effect that somewhat affected him and affected any other business. But what he was doing at the time was, we used to change the motor oil in the company vehicles. And we'd take the used motor oil and put it in an empty Dello 400 drum. But then what do you do with the oil that's in the drum? You can't reuse it in the motor because the viscosity's gone, plus there may be trash in that drum. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend putting it in a motor. Okay, you can't pour it out on some leaves and grass clippings to start a fire, because that's illegal. You can't just pour it all out on the ground, which is why we were pouring it in a drum, because what do you do with it? And it was behind a retaining wall, so if it leaked, it couldn't get out on the ground anyway. So, I mean, you have to watch all this stuff. Then you can't just dig a hole and bury the drum with it full of oil, because that's illegal too. So what the hell do you do with a drum that's filled up with used motor oil? We can't run it through a process and get the viscosity back and make it like it's brand new, revitalized oil. We can't do that. Now, I don't even know if they can do that with real oil. I think they can do it with synthetic, but not, what I would consider like natural oil here. I don't think they can do it, but maybe they can. But we can't. We don't have that machinery or process for it to go through, or processes for it to go through. So it's completely worthless to us, and it's illegal to do anything with the damn oil. So what do you do with it? And my uncle never had any more than one drum on the scene at the time, but it was an eyesore. And eventually you can have two, and then you have three, and then, and it did take us a while to fill up a 55-gallon drum by changing the oil in the trucks. And it was like, what do you do with it? Well, he found a shipping company, a hazardous shipping company, that would take it to a hazardous dump site. And let's say the hazardous dump site's in Alabama. Well, you pay $500 or $600 to get rid of the drum. This is where the EPA little ruling is asinine. You pay the money, the shipping company comes, picks it up, they load it onto a semi-truck, and that semi-truck is on the way from point A to point B. It jackknifes about halfway there. The contents of the oil of the drum spill out all over the highway. My uncle's still on the hook for the cleanup, even though the truck driver nor the truck belongs to my uncle. He doesn't own his company plus the shipping company. So why is he still on the hook? This is asinine ruling. And there's no other way to slice and dice it. It is asinine, and there is no organization out there that challenges the EPA. Nothing, because they're looked at. You can't challenge Captain Planet and the Planeteers, because you're a bad guy. If you even question them, you're a bad guy. That's just the way it works. And there ought to be an organization that says, hey, this doesn't make any sense. Rewrite this where it makes sense. Because they can just come up with anything they want to, and that's the problem. Now we go with scenario number 2. Same situation. The drum is in transit. It makes it to the dump site. The forklift operator who works for the hazardous waste site, or works on the site, jams a fork in the drum. Contents spill out all over the place. My uncle's on the hook for that, and the drum has made it all the way to Alabama. It's not even in the same state anymore. But yet my uncle's still on the damn hook. That is also asinine. But this is what happens with the EPA. They put rules in opposition to one another, and you try to navigate through that minefield. So then my uncle said, you know what? after I get rid of this drum, we're not changing the oil anymore. So we don't have this oil drum buildup because I don't know what to do with it. And they're putting everything in opposition. So no more changing the oil in the company trucks. Take it to a lube place and let them do it and let them deal with it because they probably have better ways of dealing with it. They probably just ship it straight to an oil company and they revitalize it. It's just easier that way. And it just puts everything, it makes it harder for companies to do their own preventative maintenance on the vehicles if they want to do that to save themselves some money, because it's not really going to save them any money when you're going to punish the shit out of them. It's not no different than if my uncle had gotten me and another employee, we'd have loaded that drum up in the back of a pickup truck, which also would have been illegal because it's not for hazardous material, and I think you also have to have a particular license to carry hazardous material. And we would have tried to take a chance on driving it all the way to wherever the site was in Alabama. If we got there with no problems, dumped the drum off, no problems, and got back home, he probably would have saved some money. But if we'd have gotten busted, he'd have lost money. So it's just ridiculous.